welcome. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Or, I might show up at your door. I'm just here to share some creepy stories, so sit back and enjoy. Disclaimer: the content presented in the video is purely for entertainment purposes only. The theories and stories discussed in this video are speculative and are not supported by any evidence or proof. Viewer discretion is advised. Journal entry number 1, June 17th. I've always found comfort in patterns. In the predictable rise and fall of the sun, the steady progression of constellations across our night sky, the reliable rhythm of seasons. When you live in a place like Pinewood, population 2,346 and dwindling, those cosmic constants become your companions. That's probably why I became an amateur astronomer in the first place. The stars don't leave like everyone else does. My little observatory setup isn't much, just a modest telescope mounted in the converted attic of my grandfather's farmhouse, alongside my collection of ham radio equipment. But it's mine, and it's helped me track the mechanics of the universe for 15 years. I know when Venus will appear as the evening star, when Jupiter's moons will transit, when meteor showers will pepper our skies. I understand these patterns. I trust them, or at least I did until today. I was testing a new antenna configuration this morning, scanning frequencies and documenting signal clarity in my log. Routine stuff, nothing I haven't done hundreds of times before. The weather was perfect. Clear blue skies with that deep cerulean quality that hints at endless depth above our atmosphere. The forecast predicted a mild evening, ideal for the star chart updates I'd planned. That was when I caught it. An interruption in the usual local chatter and distant broadcasts. A tone that shouldn't have been there, followed by a voice I'd never heard on any of my usual channels. I scrambled for my notebook, knocked over my coffee, now a brown stain on my star charts that I can't bring myself to care about, and started transcribing. This is an emergency alert issued by the United States Department of Defense in coordination with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. A celestial alignment anomaly has been detected that will affect the continental United States beginning at sunset today, June 17th. Due to this anomaly, nighttime conditions will persist for approximately 72 hours. This is not a test. I thought it was a joke. Some kid with enough technical knowledge to hijack a frequency. But the broadcast continued, too precise and too extensive to be a prank. Citizens are advised to prepare for extended darkness. Secure 3 days of non-perishable food, water, and necessary medications. Charging of electronic devices is recommended while power grids remain stable. Stay indoors when possible. Avoid extended observation of the night sky during this period. Further updates will follow on this frequency. This message will repeat, and it did repeat. For times before cutting out, I checked other frequencies. Nothing. I called the Pinewood Gazette, our weekly paper run by old Jim Hollister, but he hadn't heard anything. I checked online news sources, but there was no mention of any celestial anomaly. For 20 minutes, I convinced myself it was an elaborate hoax. Then my phone lit up with the same message. And the neighbors' phones. And the town siren, the one tested monthly for tornado warnings, began its slow, mournful wail. Main Street transformed within an hour. The parking lot of Grover's General Store filled to capacity for the first time since the 4th of July sale last year. I found myself there too, watching Mrs. Davenport fill 2 carts with canned goods while Mayor Watts tried unsuccessfully to organize some kind of system for the panic buying. I grabbed what I could, mostly what others overlooked. Rice, dried beans, a few gallons of water, batteries. That's when I saw her for the first time. A woman in a crisp military uniform, her dark hair pulled back so tightly it looked painful. She wasn't shopping. She was watching, observing our reactions with a clipboard in hand, occasionally speaking into a sleek black radio that looked nothing like the standard equipment our local police carry. When our eyes met, she didn't look away like someone caught staring should. Instead, she nodded slightly, as if confirming something to herself about me. I paid for my supplies and left without approaching her. Something in her posture, too rigid, too prepared, suggested this wasn't all new information to her. Back home, I found my elderly neighbor Eliza Pearson sitting on my porch steps. She's lived next door for all of my 34 years, and probably 50 before that. Her eyes have that milky quality of advancing cataracts, but she claims she sees more clearly than most. "Morgan," she said without turning to look at me, somehow knowing it was me from just my footsteps. "It's happening again." I set my bags down beside her. "What's happening again, Eliza?" "The long night." My grandmother told me stories. She rubbed her knuckles, twisted with arthritis. Said her grandmother lived through 70-some hours of darkness when it should have been daylight. People went mad from it. Others saw things they shouldn't. I've always humored Eliza's stories. Local folklore passed down through generations often contains kernels of astronomical observations, just wrapped in superstition. But today, her words sent an involuntary shiver across my skin. "The government's saying it's some kind of celestial alignment," I offered. Eliza made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a scoff. "That's what they always say when they don't want to tell you the truth." She reached out, her hand finding my arm with surprising accuracy. "Whatever you do, Morgan, don't spend those 72 hours looking up. The stars will be looking back." I helped her home, then spent the remaining daylight hours checking my equipment. The sun was already dipping toward the horizon, painting the sky in watercolor oranges and pinks that would normally have me setting up for sunset photographs. Today, they just felt like a countdown. Sheriff Whitaker's patrol car crawled down our road around 4 p.m., his voice crackling over a megaphone repeating the same instructions from the alert, adding that a town meeting would be held at the high school gymnasium tomorrow morning. When I waved him down to ask questions, he looked unusually tense. "Just follow the advisory, Morgan," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Keep your stargazing hobby on hold for a few days. Ben, we've known each other since high school. What's really going on?" He glanced around before answering. "Military rolled in about an hour ago, setting up some kind of command center at the old fire station. Won't tell me anything except it's need to know. And apparently the elected sheriff of this county doesn't need to know." His hand rested on his holster, a nervous habit, not a threat. "Just be careful. Something doesn't add up." As he pulled away, I noticed unusual movement on rural Route 16, the dirt road that leads to the highest point in the county, a spot I often use for meteor shower viewings. A convoy of dark vehicles with government plates was making its way up, raising dust clouds in the golden hour light. Now I sit at my desk by the attic window, watching the final sliver of sun disappear below the horizon. My telescope is covered, as advised. My radio is set to the emergency frequency. My journal is open. Outside, darkness gathers more quickly than it should, as if eager to begin its extended reign. The regular chorus of evening birds has gone silent. No crickets have begun their nightly song. And just now, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The first stars appearing in the east, they're in the wrong position. Completely, utterly wrong for this time of year. I don't know what's coming in these 72 hours of night, but I'm certain of one thing. The emergency alert didn't tell us everything. The darkness falling isn't just the absence of daylight. It's something else entirely. June 17th, hour 6 of darkness. The night has settled over Pinewood like a heavy blanket, but something about it feels wrong. I've spent countless evenings under the stars, but this darkness has a different quality. It's denser somehow, as if the very air has thickened. 6 hours have passed since the sun dipped below the horizon, and I can't shake the sensation that we're being watched from above. I tried sleeping earlier, thinking I should bank rest for whatever's coming, but my mind refused to quiet. Every creak of the old farmhouse set my nerves on edge. Eventually, I gave up and returned to this journal, hoping that documenting my observations might keep the growing unease at bay. The electricity is still functioning, though it flickers occasionally. Most homes in town have their lights on, little squares of yellow warmth dotting the landscape when I look out my window. Nobody wants to be in the dark tonight. I've positioned lanterns and flashlights throughout the house, just in case. Around midnight, I broke protocol and uncovered my telescope. I told myself it was just to verify the stellar anomalies I'd noticed earlier, a quick scientific observation. What I saw froze my blood. The constellations aren't just in the wrong position, they're wrong entirely. Familiar patterns are distorted, as if viewed through warped glass. Polaris, our reliable North Star, has shifted several degrees from where it should be. And there are stars visible that shouldn't be, not from this hemisphere, not from this planet. Most disturbing is a faint bluish halo surrounding certain stars, particularly in the northeastern quadrant. I've never seen anything like it in 15 years of observation. It's not lens flare or atmospheric distortion. It's as if those stars are bleeding light. I covered the telescope quickly when headlights swept up my driveway, illuminating the room. A black SUV with government plates parked next to my truck, and the woman I'd seen at Grover's emerged, now wearing what looked like tactical gear beneath her open military jacket. She approached my front door with purpose. 3 sharp knocks, military precision. Mr. Thorne? Major Diana Hayes, Department of Defense. May I come in? I hesitated before opening the door. Her posture was rigid, her expression unreadable in the porch light. You're the amateur astronomer, she said. Not a question. The one with the ham radio setup. How did you? Small town. People talk. She glanced past me, toward the stairs leading to my attic observatory. Mind if we chat inside? I led her to the kitchen, offering coffee which she declined. Up close, Major Hayes was younger than I'd initially thought, maybe early 30s, but her eyes held the weight of someone who'd seen too much. A small pin on her collar caught my attention, a black circle with what looked like a constellation inside it. We're conducting atmospheric readings throughout the county, she explained, placing a folder on the table. Your property is an ideal monitoring location given its elevation and clear sightlines. Atmospheric readings for a celestial alignment? I asked, unable to keep the skepticism from my voice. She studied me for a moment. You've been looking through your telescope, haven't you? Despite the advisory, my silence confirmed her suspicion. What did you see, Mr. Thorne? The stars are wrong, I said simply, and there's some kind of aura around certain ones. I've never observed anything like it. Something flashed across her face. Recognition, maybe even satisfaction. She opened the folder and pushed a document toward me. It was a topographical map of the area with my property circled in red. We'd like to set up equipment in your field, just for the duration of the event. She tapped another circle on the map, the hilltop on Route 16. We're establishing our primary monitoring station here, but we need secondary locations. What exactly are you monitoring, Major? She closed the folder. Changes in gravitational fields, radiation levels, atmospheric composition. Standard procedure for celestial anomalies. Is that what this is? Just an anomaly? Major Hayes leaned forward slightly. What else would it be, Mr. Thorne? The question hung between us, neither accusation nor dismissal. Testing, perhaps. Permission granted, I said eventually. For the equipment. She nodded, seemingly satisfied, and rose to leave. At the door, she paused. A word of advice. The advisory about not observing the sky isn't just precautionary. Extended exposure to certain wavelengths currently present in the atmosphere could have neurological effects. Is that why the stars look wrong? The stars are exactly where they've always been, Mr. Thorne. It's our perspective that's changing. With that cryptic statement, she left. Within 30 minutes, a team of technicians in dark uniforms had set up a collection of equipment in my east field. Devices I didn't recognize despite my familiarity with astronomical tools. One appeared to be pointed not at the sky, but at my house. I watched from the window as they worked efficiently in the unnatural night, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. When they finished, Major Hayes spoke briefly with the team leader, then glanced up at my window. Though I stepped back quickly, I'm certain she saw me watching. The convoy departed, leaving behind humming equipment and blinking red lights in my field. One of the technicians remained, sitting in a vehicle at the edge of my property, monitoring the monitors, I suppose. Shortly after they left, I received another emergency alert. Hour 6 update. The celestial anomaly continues as projected. All citizens are reminded to limit exposure to night sky. Unexplained symptoms including headaches, visual disturbances, or sensations of being watched should be reported immediately to established checkpoints. Conserve power when possible. Next update in 6 hours. I tried calling Sheriff Whitaker afterward, but got no answer. Same with the mayor's office and even old Jim at the Gazette. It's as if the usual channels of communication have been quietly severed. Growing restless, I decided to walk to the end of my driveway to check my mailbox. A pointless task given the circumstances, but I needed to move. The technician in the vehicle straightened as I emerged but didn't approach. That's when I saw it. Eliza Pearson standing in her yard, face tilted upward despite the warnings, bathed in the wrong starlight. Even from a distance, I could see she was weeping. "Eliza," I called, crossing onto her property. "You should come inside." She didn't acknowledge me at first, continuing to stare upward. When she finally looked my way, her cloudy eyes seemed somehow clearer. "They're moving, Morgan," she whispered. "Can't you see it? They're rearranging themselves." I made the mistake of looking up then. For just a moment, I thought I saw what she meant. Subtle shifts in the stellar positions, like minute hands on a cosmic clock. And something else. A darkness moving against darkness, vast and patient. The technician's voice startled me. "Sir, please return to your residence and refrain from sky observation." He had approached silently, now standing at the property line. His hand rested on what appeared to be a weapon. I guided Eliza back to her house, promising to check on her soon. As I closed her door, she gripped my arm with surprising strength. "The government men were here in my grandmother's time too," she said. "They didn't stop it then either. Back in my house now, I've drawn all the curtains. The equipment in my field continues its electronic vigil, lights blinking in sequences I can't decipher. The darkness outside my windows feels like it's pressing inward, testing the boundaries of my home. Hour 6 of 72, and already the patterns I've trusted all my life are unraveling. What happens when the countdown reaches 0? Will daylight return as promised? Or is Major Hayes right? Is it our perspective that's changing? And if so, what exactly are we being prepared to see? June 18th, hour 10 of darkness. Sleep came in fitful bursts, dreams fractured by images of stars moving like schools of fish, synchronized and purposeful. I woke repeatedly to check the time, disoriented by the persistent darkness outside my windows. The clock insists it's morning now, 9:17 a.m. according to my watch, but the world remains shrouded in night. 10 hours of darkness, and my body's natural rhythms are already protesting the wrongness of it. The emergency alert system activated again at the 6-hour mark as promised. Hour 12 update. Celestial anomaly proceeding as anticipated. Atmospheric conditions remain stable but unusual. Town meeting at Pinewood High School Gymnasium postponed until hour 24. Citizens advised to maintain indoor positions when possible. Check on vulnerable neighbors using phone communication rather than in-person visits. Sky observation restrictions remain in effect. Symptoms of concern now include nosebleeds, auditory hallucinations, and unexplained euphoria. Next update in 12 hours. The postponement of the town meeting struck me as significant. What changed in their assessment? And the expanded list of symptoms of concern has only heightened my unease. What exactly are we being exposed to? I called Eliza twice this morning, but she didn't answer. After the third attempt, I decided to check on her despite the advisory against in-person visits. The walk to her house is barely 30 yards across our adjoining properties, but in this unnatural darkness, it felt much longer. The government technician was still in his vehicle, but appeared to be sleeping. I moved quietly past. Eliza's house was dark when I arrived. No lights visible through any window. My knocking went unanswered. I tried the door and found it unlocked, which wasn't unusual for her generation in our small town. Inside, the house smelled of chamomile tea and old books, familiar and comforting. "Eliza!" I called out, navigating the familiar layout by memory and the dim glow of my flashlight. I found her in the sunroom at the back of the house. Ironic name for the space now, sitting in her rocking chair. Relief washed over me until I realized she was still staring upward through the glass ceiling, just as she had been hours earlier in her yard. She hadn't moved. "Eliza, it's Morgan," I said, approaching cautiously. Her rocking stopped. "They used to call them watchers," she said without looking at me. "The ones that move differently than the rest. My grandmother's people believed they were eyes." I followed her gaze upward. Through the glass ceiling panels, the night sky was fully visible. I knew I shouldn't look, remembered Major Hayes' warning about neurological effects, but curiosity overwhelmed caution. What I saw will haunt me for whatever remains of my life. The stars I'd observed earlier, the ones with the bluish halos, were indeed moving. Not the gradual arc of normal celestial movement, but deliberate adjustments of position, like pieces being placed on a cosmic game board. And as I watched, certain clusters seemed to orient themselves, aligning into what I can only describe as focal points. Looking directly at one such cluster, I experienced a sensation of being perceived, not just seen but assessed, cataloged, understood in ways beyond human comprehension. My vision tunneled, the edges darkening until only that distant point of light remained. Eliza's hand on my arm broke the connection. I gasped, suddenly aware I'd stopped breathing. "Don't look too long," she warned. "They remember the ones who watch back." I helped her away from the sunroom, insisting she close the blinds and stay in her interior rooms. She agreed with surprising compliance, allowing me to make her tea and set up battery-powered lanterns throughout her house. As I prepared to leave, she pressed a small object into my hand. A tarnished silver pendant on a chain, circular with an 8-pointed star etched into its center. "My grandmother wore this during the long night," she said. "It won't stop them from seeing you, but it might stop you from seeing too much of them." I slipped the necklace over my head, thanking her, though I'm not superstitious by nature. The metal felt unexpectedly warm against my skin. Leaving Eliza's house, I noticed increased activity on the main road. Vehicles moving without headlights, their outlines barely visible in the pervasive darkness. Unlike the military convoy from earlier, these appeared to be local trucks and cars, moving with purpose toward town. Curious and increasingly stir-crazy from confinement, I decided to follow them. The technician's vehicle was empty now. Perhaps he'd been called away during my visit with Eliza. I took the opportunity to slip past and make my way toward town on foot, keeping to the shadows out of instinctive caution. Pinewood looks wrong in this extended night. The streets I've known all my life have become unfamiliar, landmarks distorted by darkness and the sparse, uneven illumination of emergency lighting. Few people were outside, but those I glimpsed moved quickly, heads down, hurrying between destinations. Main Street was partially blocked by military vehicles near the old fire station, now clearly converted into some kind of command center. Uniformed personnel moved equipment between buildings while others established a perimeter. I kept my distance, observing from the shadow of the hardware store. "You're breaking curfew, Morgan." Sheriff Whitaker's voice nearly stopped my heart. He'd approached from behind without making a sound, a skill I'd never known him to possess in all our years of acquaintance. "There's no curfew in the emergency alerts," I countered, turning to face him. Ben looked exhausted, his normally kempt appearance disheveled. His sheriff's badge caught the dim emergency lights, flashing momentarily. "It's implied in maintain indoor positions." "What are you doing out here?" "Checking on Eliza." Then I saw all the movement toward town and got curious. I nodded toward the fire station. "What's happening over there?" Ben's gaze flicked toward the military installation, then back to me. Atmospheric monitoring. Same as everywhere else. His answer came too quickly, rehearsed. Ben, we've known each other since we were kids. Level with me. What's really going on? He seemed to war with himself before responding. Listen, all I know is they're tracking something. Something in the sky that shouldn't be there. He lowered his voice. They've set up these monitoring stations in a pattern across the county. Whatever they're watching, they're triangulating its position. A vehicle approached, and Ben straightened, his demeanor shifting instantly to official authority. You should head home now, Mr. Thorne. It's not safe to be out during the anomaly. The approaching vehicle slowed, another black SUV with government plates. The window lowered, revealing Major Hayes in the passenger seat. Sheriff, Mr. Thorne. Her eyes narrowed slightly at my presence. Is there a problem? No, ma'am, Ben replied. Just encountered a resident who got disoriented in the darkness. I'm escorting him home. She studied me for a moment. Interesting pendant, Mr. Thorne. Family heirloom. My hand went instinctively to Eliza's necklace. Just something from a neighbor. I see. Her tone suggested she saw more than I intended. Sheriff, we need you at the command center when you're finished here. The situation has evolved. As the SUV pulled away, Ben gripped my arm firmly. I meant what I said. Go home. Now. And Morgan? He hesitated, glancing at the sky before continuing. Don't trust what you see up there. It's not what we think it is. I let him escort me to the edge of town before insisting I could find my own way home. As we parted, he pressed something into my hand. A key card with the sheriff's department logo. Back door to the station, he muttered. If things get worse and you need shelter, the basement level has been designated a safe zone. Before I could ask what worse might entail, he was gone, swallowed by the unnatural night. The walk home was tense. Twice I heard vehicles approaching and hid until they passed. The darkness between streetlights seemed to deepen, pockets of absolute black that drank in the beam of my flashlight. Above, the wrong stars continued their silent watch. Near the final stretch to my property, I risked a glance upward. The star clusters had shifted again, forming what appeared to be a loose ring in the northeastern sky. And at its center, a void, an absence more profound than mere darkness. A place where stars should be, but weren't. A cold certainty settled over me then. Whatever this phenomenon is, it's not just an anomaly or alignment. It's an arrival. Now back in my house, I've secured all entries and drawn the blinds tighter. The equipment in my field has changed configuration, all instruments now pointed at that same northeastern section of sky. The technician has returned with two others, all wearing what appear to be radiation suits as they take readings. Hour 10 of 72. The darkness outside continues, relentless. And somehow I know with absolute certainty that if the sun finally returns, the world it illuminates will not be the same one it left. June 18th, hour 16 of darkness. The persistent darkness has begun to play tricks on my perception. 16 hours of night with no respite of dawn has left me checking and rechecking my watch, disbelieving that it's now afternoon according to the clock. My body disagrees, caught in a twilight state between wakefulness and exhaustion. The usual rhythms that govern human existence have been suspended, leaving us adrift in this extended night. After returning from town, I tried to sleep again but found myself too agitated. Instead, I turned to my ham radio equipment, hoping to intercept communications that might shed light on what's really happening. For nearly an hour, I scanned frequencies, particularly those typically used by emergency services and military operations. Most channels carried nothing but static, which itself was unusual. There should at least be civilian chatter, other enthusiasts like myself searching for connection in the darkness. When I finally did catch fragments of communication, they were distorted, breaking up every few words as if something was interfering with the signal. Checkpoint 4 reporting anomalous. Gravitational readings off the civilian exposure at Sector 7 requires confirm visual on the void aperture. That last phrase, void aperture, sent a chill through me. It matched too perfectly with what I'd seen in the northeastern sky, that perfect absence surrounded by a ring of repositioned stars. I was attempting to isolate the frequency when another emergency alert broadcast cut through all channels. Hour 18 update. Celestial anomaly continues. New development. Atmospheric interference affecting communication systems. Citizens may experience disruptions to phone services, internet connectivity, and broadcast signals. This interference is temporary and related to the ongoing event. Town meeting rescheduled for hour 36 at Pinewood High School. Citizens experiencing listed symptoms should report to medical stations now established at the elementary school. Remain indoors during darkness hours. Sky observation restrictions remain in absolute effect. No exceptions. Checkpoint personnel are authorized to enforce compliance. Next update in 6 hours. The warning's tone had shifted subtly, more urgent, more directive. The casual mention of checkpoint personnel enforcing compliance suggested a level of authority beyond mere advisories. I checked my phone and found the signal had indeed degraded to a single bar. My internet connection flickered in and out, pages loading partially before failing. As I sat contemplating this development, a flash of light from outside caught my attention. Not the steady beams of flashlights or headlights, but a brief, brilliant pulse that momentarily illuminated my entire property. It came from the direction of the equipment installation in my field. Curiosity overrode caution. I approached the window, careful to stay hidden behind the curtain, and peered out at the field. The monitoring equipment had changed again, now featuring what appeared to be a satellite dish oriented toward that same northeastern quadrant of sky. The technicians moved with increased urgency, their radiation suits now supplemented with additional gear I couldn't identify. One held something resembling a Geiger counter, sweeping it in arcs across the ground and air. Another pulse of light erupted from their central device, flash freezing the scene in harsh white illumination. In that instant, I noticed something troubling. Where the light touched the ground, a faint bluish residue remained for several seconds afterward, the same color as the halos I'd observed around certain stars. My attention was diverted by the sound of my phone ringing, startling in the quiet house. The caller ID showed Sheriff Whitaker's office. "Morgan, it's Ben," he said when I answered, his voice tense and partially obscured by static. "Are you home?" "Yes." "What's going on, Ben?" The equipment in my field just emitted some kind of pulse. "Listen carefully," he interrupted. "You need to gather essentials and be ready to evacuate if necessary. The situation is developing." "Evacuate to where? What's happening?" Static overtook the line for several seconds before his voice returned. "Not what they told us initially. Major Hayes is more static. Readings suggest it's not just observing anymore. The call dropped entirely. When I tried to redial, an automated message informed me that all circuits were busy. I moved through the house gathering essentials as Ben had advised: water, non-perishable food, medications, flashlights, my journal. As I worked, I became aware of a faint high-pitched tone at the edge of my hearing. Not quite a ringing, more like the whine of electronics under stress. The pendant Eliza had given me seemed to grow warmer against my skin. On impulse, I removed it to examine it more closely. The 8-pointed star design appeared to be vibrating slightly, though when I touched it directly, it was solid and still. A trick of the eyes, perhaps, or the beginning of the visual disturbances mentioned in the alerts. I was replacing it around my neck when I heard a vehicle approaching. Looking out, I saw not the expected military SUV, but Eliza's ancient blue Buick crawling up my driveway, headlights off. The technicians in my field immediately reoriented, moving toward her vehicle with purpose. I rushed outside to intercept them, reaching Eliza's car just as she emerged with surprising agility for her age. "Mr. Thorne, please return to your residence," one technician called out, voice muffled by his protective mask. I ignored him, focusing on Eliza. "What are you doing here? It's not safe to be driving in this." Her cloudy eyes found mine with unsettling precision. It's starting, Morgan. Just like before. The interference, it's them trying to speak. The technician reached us, placing himself between Eliza and me. Ma'am, you need to return home immediately. Sir, back to your house now. The signals, Eliza continued, seeming not to notice the technician. They don't want you to hear them. That's what all this equipment is for, not measuring, blocking. Ma'am, that's classified information. The technician began, then caught himself. In that slip, I understood something crucial. Eliza was right. Whatever they'd installed in my field wasn't just monitoring the phenomenon. It was actively interfering with it. Another pulse erupted from the equipment, brighter than before. In its illumination, I saw something that defied comprehension. A momentary thinning of the air above us, as if reality itself had grown transparent. Through that thinning, for just a fraction of a second, I glimpsed something else. A vastness populated by shapes that hurt my mind to perceive. When the light faded, the technician's demeanor had changed completely. He spoke urgently into his radio, then turned to us. Both of you inside the house now. Emergency protocols are being initiated. What did I just see? I demanded. A lens flare from our equipment. He replied too quickly. Nothing more. Now please. It's a window, Eliza said calmly. Every 73 years, they make a window. The technician stiffened. How do you know that time frame? That's restricted information. Eliza smiled faintly. Because I was a little girl the last time. 1952. They came then too, your people, with their machines and warnings. But they couldn't stop it then either. Before the technician could respond, his radio crackled to life with an urgent voice I recognized as Major Hayes. All field units. Gravitational anomaly increasing at primary site. Containment protocols Alpha 7 now in effect. Prepare for possible breach event. The technician paled visibly even through his protective mask. Inside. Now, as he ushered us toward my house, 3 military vehicles roared up the road toward us, skidding to a halt in my driveway. Major Hayes emerged from the lead vehicle, now dressed in what appeared to be full tactical gear plus the same radiation protection the technicians wore. Mr. Thorne, she called, striding toward us. We need to talk. Immediately, the sky above us seemed to ripple, like heat waves rising from summer asphalt. The pendant against my chest had grown hot enough to be uncomfortable. The window is opening, Eliza whispered beside me. And something's already coming through. Hour 16 of 72. And I'm beginning to fear that the countdown isn't leading to a return of daylight, but to something far more terrifying. Whatever lies on the other side of that void aperture is reaching toward us through the extended night, and the barriers between our worlds are growing thinner by the hour. June 18th, hour 22 of darkness. My living room has become an impromptu command center. Major Hayes sits at my dining table, surrounded by maps and a portable communications array that her team brought in. 2 armed soldiers stand by my front door while technicians continue to adjust the equipment in my field, now supplemented with additional machinery unloaded from their vehicles. The pulses of light have increased in both frequency and intensity, each one briefly illuminating the landscape in harsh, clinical brightness before plunging us back into the unnatural night. Eliza sits calmly in my grandfather's old armchair, seemingly unperturbed by the military presence. She watches the proceedings with an almost amused expression, occasionally touching the embroidered stars on the sleeve of her cardigan, a habit I've never noticed before. Major Hayes keeps glancing her way with poorly concealed interest. Let me be clear about your situation, Mr. Thorne, Hayes said after dismissing her subordinates to give us privacy. What I'm about to share is classified under national security protocols. You're being included only because your property has become integral to our containment operation, and because, she hesitated, eyes flicking to Eliza. You've already been exposed to information through unofficial channels. You mean the truth? Eliza interjected softly. Hayes ignored her. The phenomenon we're experiencing is not simply a celestial alignment anomaly, as the public has been told. It's a recurring event that our department has documented only once before, in 1952, the year Eliza had mentioned. I felt the blood drain from my face. What exactly is happening, Major? I asked. She unfolded a map on my table, pointing to various marked locations forming a rough circle around Pinewood County. We've established monitoring stations at these coordinates, positions that correspond to a mathematical model derived from the 1952 event. Your property happens to sit at a critical junction in this formation. Why Pinewood? I pressed. Why here? Gravitational anomalies, she replied. This region sits above a unique geological formation that somehow amplifies certain cosmic phenomena. Think of it as an acoustic chamber that resonates with particular frequencies from deep space. Eliza made a soft noise that might have been laughter. You still don't understand what it is, do you? After all these years of study, Hayes stiffened. Mrs. Pearson, your family's folklore interpretations, while historically interesting, are not folklore, Eliza cut in. Memory. My grandmother was one of your researchers in 52, Dr. Eleanor Pearson. Check your records. Something changed in Hayes' expression, recognition, followed by reassessment. She reached for her tablet, fingers flying across its surface. Whatever she found there caused her to look at Eliza with new respect. Dr. Eleanor Pearson was lead theoretical physicist on Project Nightfall, she said slowly. Her notes form the foundation of our current understanding. But she disappeared shortly after the event concluded, taking key research with her. Not disappeared, Eliza corrected. Hid, to protect what she learned, what they didn't want known. The room seemed to grow colder as Hayes and Eliza stared at each other, decades of secrecy and knowledge hanging in the balance between them. I broke the silence. Would someone please tell me what's actually happening to our sky? Hayes hesitated, then apparently made a decision. We call it a cosmic aperture event, a temporary thinning between dimensional membranes, allowing limited interaction between our universe and another. A window, I said, remembering Eliza's words. Essentially, yes. One that recurs in 73-year cycles in this specific geographical location. And the extended night? I asked. A side effect of the gravitational distortion. It bends light around our region, creating what appears to be an extended night to those within the affected radius. The implications staggered me. So beyond Pinewood, the sun is rising and setting normally. This phenomenon is localized to approximately a 30-mile radius centered on the primary aperture site. I thought of the void I'd seen in the northeastern sky, that perfect absence surrounded by repositioned stars. And what's on the other side of this window? Hayes' expression darkened. That's what we're working to understand. In 1952, the aperture opened fully for approximately 3 minutes before our containment protocols managed to force it closed. In that time, there were incidents, deaths, Eliza said flatly. 27 of them. People who looked directly into the aperture when it opened completely. Their causes of death were never conclusively established, Hayes countered. Because what killed them doesn't exist in our universe, Eliza said. My grandmother called them watchers, entities that exist in the space between stars, drawn to consciousness like moths to flame. They observe, they study, and sometimes they collect. A chill ran through me as I remembered the sensation of being perceived when I'd looked at those strange star clusters, the feeling of being assessed, cataloged. Hayes' radio crackled with static, then cleared. Major primary site reporting gravitational readings at threshold 7 and climbing. Estimated 60 minutes to critical. She acknowledged the report, then turned back to us, her professional demeanor slipping to reveal genuine concern. The aperture is opening faster than our models predicted. We need to accelerate containment procedures. What does that mean for us? I asked. It means we're initiating a full evacuation of the immediate area. You and Mrs. Pearson will be relocated to a secure facility outside the critical zone. And if your containment fails? Eliza asked quietly. Hayes didn't answer immediately, which was answer enough. A sharp knocking at the door interrupted the tense silence. One of the soldiers admitted Sheriff Whitaker, who looked even more haggard than when I'd seen him in town. His uniform was disheveled, his eyes bloodshot. "Ben?" I started, rising from my chair, but stopped when I noticed his expression. Distant, somehow empty. "Sheriff Whitaker," Hayes acknowledged. "Report. Town evacuation proceeding as ordered," he said, his voice unnaturally flat. 40% of residents secured at relocation points. Resistance minimal. Something was wrong. Ben's cadence, his posture, the vacancy in his eyes. This wasn't the man I'd known all my life. "Ben," I tried again. "Are you all right?" His head turned toward me with mechanical precision. "Fine, Morgan. Just doing my job." His gaze drifted upward, toward the ceiling, then back to me. "They've shown me what's coming. It's beautiful." Hayes was on her feet instantly, hand moving to her sidearm. "When did you last have direct exposure to the night sky, Sheriff?" Ben smiled, an expression so unlike him it transformed his face into that of a stranger. "We all should look up. They're waiting for us to see them properly." "Compromised," Hayes snapped, gesturing sharply to her soldiers. "Secure him." What happened next occurred with such speed it seems dreamlike in retrospect. Ben moved with impossible quickness, disarming the nearest soldier and using him as a shield. His eyes, his eyes had changed, the pupils expanding until almost no iris remained, reflecting the same bluish light I'd seen haloing certain stars. "The window opens fully at hour 72, he announced in that same flat voice. "Preparation must continue. The Watchers have chosen this place this time." Hayes drew her weapon. "Sheriff Whitaker, stand down immediately." "Ben isn't here anymore," he replied, smile widening unnaturally. "Just his echo." He backed toward the door, still using the struggling soldier as cover. "Stay in the light pulses," he advised, an incongruous moment of the real Ben showing through. "They can't see you when the pulses fire." Then he was gone, disappearing into the darkness outside with frightening speed. Shouts and the sounds of pursuit followed, then a vehicle engine roaring to life and tires squealing on pavement. Hayes barked orders into her radio while her remaining personnel secured the house. Eliza hadn't moved from her chair during the entire confrontation. She looked sad but unsurprised. "It's starting," she said simply. "The collection." Outside, the equipment in my field emitted another pulse, its most powerful yet. In its brief illumination, I saw dozens of figures standing at the edge of my property, motionless, all staring upward at the northeastern sky. When darkness returned, they were gone, or perhaps still there, invisible in the perfect black. Hour 22 of 72. The military's containment plan is failing. The evacuation has begun, and whatever waits on the other side of that cosmic window is already reaching through, touching minds, preparing us for its arrival. The pendant Eliza gave me burns against my skin now, a constant reminder of something her grandmother understood 73 years ago. Some windows are meant to remain closed, some knowledge too vast for human comprehension. And we have 50 hours remaining until the darkness reveals what truly waits beyond the stars. June 18th, hour 28 of darkness. The military evacuation of my property was executed with surgical precision. Within an hour of Sheriff Whitaker's disturbing transformation and escape, Major Hayes had orchestrated the complete relocation of her equipment and personnel to a new command center at the old Pinewood Mill, about 3 miles west of my home. Despite her insistence, I refused evacuation. This is my home, my observatory, and, as I'm increasingly convinced, my responsibility. "You're making a grave mistake, Mr. Thorne," Hayes said as she prepared to depart. "Whatever affected Sheriff Whitaker is spreading. We've had 4 similar incidents among civilians who violated the no-observation protocol. All the more reason I need to stay," I replied. "My telescope is specially equipped for spectral analysis. If something is emanating from that void in the sky, I might be able to identify it. Hayes' expression hardened. That's precisely what we're trying to prevent. Direct observation appears to be the vector of infection. It wasn't until she'd left that I realized she'd never actually ordered me to evacuate, merely strongly suggested it, almost as if some part of her wanted me to remain, to continue my observations outside military protocols. Eliza also refused relocation, returning to her own home just down the road. She left me with one final cryptic comment. "Your grandfather chose this property for a reason, Morgan. The observatory wasn't just for stargazing." That statement has haunted me for the past 6 hours as I've worked feverishly in the observatory, reviewing old star charts and comparing them to current positions. The displacement of stellar bodies is measurable now, with clusters seeming to orbit around that perfect void in the northeastern sky. The configurations form patterns that shouldn't be possible according to known celestial mechanics. Hour 32. The regular emergency broadcasts have returned after several hours of silence, but with a significant change in content. This is an emergency alert from the United States Department of Defense. The astronomical event affecting Pinewood County is now classified as a Level 4 atmospheric disturbance. All residents within evacuation zones must comply with military personnel. Important safety protocol. Do not observe celestial bodies directly. Viewing the night sky without approved protective equipment is strictly prohibited. Symptoms of exposure include disorientation, insomnia, auditory hallucinations, and altered perception. Report any individuals displaying these symptoms to military checkpoints immediately. The broadcast repeats every 30 minutes, each iteration slightly clearer about the dangers while simultaneously more vague about their cause. What's particularly troubling is the mention of auditory hallucinations. I've been hearing something like distant whispers whenever I work with the telescope, voices just below the threshold of comprehension. I've resorted to using the digital imaging system exclusively, viewing the sky only through my monitors rather than direct optical observation. It's during this digital observation that I made the most startling discovery yet. The void isn't simply an absence of stars. It's moving, not drifting with the rotation of the Earth as other celestial bodies do, but expanding outward in rhythmic pulses. Each pulse corresponds exactly with the light bursts from the military equipment now stationed at the mill. They're not monitoring the phenomenon. They're containing it. Hour 36. Eliza appeared at my door an hour ago, looking haggard. Without preamble, she handed me a worn journal bound in faded leather. "My grandmother's research notes," she explained. "The ones she took when she left Project Nightfall. You need to understand what we're facing before it's too late." I've been reading through Dr. Eleanor Pearson's notes while my instruments continue their automated observations. The journal is dense with equations and theories, but certain passages stand out with terrifying clarity. The aperture is not random. It selects locations of conscious observation, places where humans have spent generations studying the stars. The watchers recognized our attention and began returning it. Every time we look deeply into space, they look back. Our astronomical observatories are essentially beacons, drawing their attention across vast, incomprehensible distances. And later, it is increasingly evident that the entities beyond the aperture do not perceive time as we do. For them, the 73-year cycle happens in an instant. They are patient because patience is meaningless to beings that exist outside temporal constraints. I now understand why my grandfather chose this remote hilltop for his observatory, and why he was so insistent that I maintain it after his death. He knew what was coming. He knew this place would be ground zero for whatever emerges from that cosmic window. Hour 40. The power grid failed 30 minutes ago. I'm running equipment on the observatory's backup generator, but fuel is limited. The lack of ambient light has made the night sky unbearably crisp and clear. Stars seem to hang just beyond reach, their light somehow thicker than normal. I've taken the risk of direct observation through the telescope, using the specialized filters my grandfather designed. What I saw defies description, but I must try to document it. The void has developed structure. Not physical structure as we understand it, but layers of nothingness, each darker than the last, receding into what can only be described as absolute absence. Around this structure, stars have formed precise geometric patterns, perfect squares, triangles, pentagrams, configurations impossible under natural gravitational influences. More disturbing are the shadows that occasionally pass across these patterns. Massive, indistinct forms moving with deliberate purpose, their edges defined only by the stars they momentarily obscure. They remind me of vast hands passing before a projector screen, manipulating the stellar objects like pieces on a game board. During this observation, I experienced a sensation unlike anything I've ever felt. A pressure not on my body but on my consciousness itself, as if something were testing the boundaries of my mind. The feeling persisted for several minutes after I pulled away from the eyepiece. An emergency alert came through on my radio shortly afterward. The automated voice has been replaced by Major Hayes herself. Attention all Pinewood County residents. This is Major Diana Hayes with an urgent update. Effective immediately, all observation of the night sky is absolutely forbidden. I repeat, do not look up under any circumstances. Military personnel will be distributing specialized eye protection. Use of unauthorized viewing equipment, including telescopes, binoculars, or cameras, is now classified as a threat to national security. This is not just a safety precaution. It is the only way to prevent what's happening to Sheriff Whitaker from spreading further. Her voice cracked slightly on that last sentence, a momentary break in military composure that frightens me more than any of the phenomena I've witnessed. Whatever is happening, it has the military genuinely terrified. Hour 43. I found something in my grandfather's design for the observatory that I never noticed before. The entire structure isn't just positioned for optimal stellar viewing. It's built on a precisely calculated geometric point that corresponds to patterns in Dr. Pearson's journal. The concrete foundation is laced with unusual metal alloys, forming a complex pattern visible only when I pulled up the old carpeting in the main observation room. The pattern matches the current configuration of stars around the void. This observatory wasn't just built to watch the stars. It was designed to interface with whatever comes through that cosmic window. My grandfather knew. He knew, and he prepared this place, prepared me for this moment. Another emergency alert just broadcast. This one distorted and breaking up. This is emergency notification, military containment protocols. Compromised, multiple breaches reported. All residents must not make direct visual, repeat, do not look, they see through your. The transmission cut out entirely after that. Through my window, I can see strange lights at the military checkpoint half a mile down the road. Not the regulated pulses of their equipment, but erratic flashes accompanied by what sounds like shouting. Something is happening. The void is growing more distinct by the hour. The watchers are coming closer, and I can't shake the feeling that my grandfather built this observatory not to keep them out, but to invite them in. Hour 47. Eliza arrived 20 minutes ago, bleeding from a cut on her forehead. She had encountered one of the converted on her way here, a former neighbor whose eyes had gone black with pinpricks of light, like personal star fields. They're getting bolder, she gasped as I treated her wound. The converted. They're gathering people, bringing them to observation points, forcing them to look up. Why? I asked, applying antiseptic to the cut. What do they want? Consciousness, she replied. Dr. Pearson's notes explain it. The watchers don't just observe, they collect. Human awareness is a resource to them, a form of energy they can harvest and utilize. Each person who looks into the void becomes a conduit, a doorway for their influence to spread. As she spoke, my radio crackled with another emergency alert, this one barely audible through waves of static. Civilian militia forming, resistance against military containment, coordinates for safe observation sites. Join us to witness the truth they've hidden, liberation through cosmic enlightenment. It wasn't a military broadcast at all. The converted have taken over the emergency alert system. They're accelerating their timeline, Eliza said grimly. The military's containment strategy is failing. We need to make a decision, Morgan. Your grandfather left you this observatory for a reason. The Pearson and Thorne families have been guardians of this knowledge for generations. Now we must decide, do we fight what's coming, or do we embrace it? I've spent my life studying the stars, believing in the grandeur of the cosmos and humanity's place within it. But what I've seen through my telescope these past hours has shaken that belief to its core. These aren't benevolent celestial wonders. They're entities of incomprehensible power and purpose, and they've been watching us, waiting for this moment. The question is no longer whether the cosmic window will open fully. It's what we'll do when it does, and we have just 25 hours left to decide. June 19th, hour 50 of darkness. The power grid failed completely 6 hours ago. My generator provides enough electricity to run essential equipment, but I've had to prioritize. The telescope's digital systems and a single radio receiver remain operational. Everything else sits dark and silent. Outside, Pinewood County has become a landscape of perfect shadow broken only by occasional distant flashes. Military flares, I hope, though their erratic patterns suggest otherwise. Eliza and I spent hours poring over her grandmother's journal, searching for anything that might help us understand what's happening. A passage near the end has consumed my attention. The aperture functions as both window and door. What peers through from the other side seeks conscious observers, minds capable of recognition. In the physics of cosmic awareness, observation creates reality. By looking into the void, we grant the entities passage. By recognizing them, we make them real in our universe. This explains the military's desperate warnings against observation. It isn't just that looking causes infection or conversion. It's that looking is itself the mechanism that widens the cosmic window. Every conscious mind that perceives the void strengthens the entity's foothold in our reality. Major Hayes confirmed as much during her brief visit an hour ago. She arrived alone, her uniform disheveled, a bandage hastily wrapped around her left hand. The professional military demeanor had evaporated, replaced by the urgency of someone running out of options. Containment has failed at the eastern perimeter, she said without preamble. We've lost contact with 3 checkpoints. At least 40 personnel have been compromised. The converted, I supplied. How many civilians? Unknown. We estimate over 200, possibly more. They're organizing, establishing observation sites at key locations that match the geometric pattern of the aperture. She unfolded a map marked with red circles. Your observatory sits at the center of the configuration. I wasn't surprised. My grandfather knew this would happen. He built this place as a focal point. Hayes studied me with new intensity. Then you understand why I'm here. We're implementing Protocol Nightfall. Eliza, who had been silent until then, suddenly straightened. That's what destroyed my grandmother's research team in '52. Hayes didn't deny it. It was partially successful. It closed the aperture prematurely and killed 27 people, Eliza added coldly. A necessary sacrifice to prevent what's happening now. Hayes turned to me. Your observatory needs to be demolished, Mr. Thorne. Its positioning is amplifying the aperture's effects. I felt a surge of protective anger. This building has been in my family for generations. My grandfather, your grandfather was part of the original Project Nightfall, Hayes interrupted. Did you know that? He worked with Dr. Pearson. When the project was terminated after the '52 incident, he established this observatory to monitor for recurrence. The revelation struck me speechless. Eliza touched my arm gently. I suspected as much. Our families have been connected by this knowledge for decades. Why do you think I chose to live nearby when I moved back to Pinewood? Hayes continued urgently. Whatever your grandfather's intentions, this structure has become a beacon. The converted are converging here. We've tracked them moving through the woods since sundown. As if summoned by her words, the radio crackled with a new emergency alert. The voice unmistakably Ben Whitaker's. though distorted by something that made each word sound simultaneously too close and impossibly distant. Attention Pinewood residents. The time of observation approaches. Those who have seen the truth should gather at the Thorn Observatory for the final viewing. The Watchers have chosen this site for communion. Bring any who still dwell in ignorance. All must witness the grand alignment at hour 72. Hayes' hand moved to her sidearm. You see? They're coming here, bringing everyone they can convert. We have authorization to implement Protocol Nightfall immediately. What exactly does that entail? I asked. A targeted EMP to disable the observatory's equipment, followed by controlled demolition. Similar operations are planned for the other geometric points. And if there are people at those locations? Eliza asked quietly. Hayes didn't answer directly. The alternative is worse. Much worse. I walked to the window and gazed out at the unnatural night. In the distance, I could see pinpricks of light moving through the trees, flashlights, dozens of them, all converging on my property. How long do we have? I asked. The demolition team is en route. 20 minutes, maybe less. I made my decision. I need to see what's in the void first. Really see it. If my grandfather built this place, as you say, there must be a purpose beyond passive observation. Hayes' expression hardened. Absolutely not. Direct observation at this stage would almost certainly result in conversion, not with proper protection. I moved to my grandfather's desk and removed a false bottom from the lowest drawer, revealing a small wooden box I discovered hours earlier while searching for clues. Inside lay 2 pairs of specialized eyepieces, unlike any telescope accessories I'd ever seen. Eliza gasped in recognition. Those are Pearson lenses. My grandmother designed them. What do they do? Hayes demanded. They filter perception, Eliza explained. Allow observation without recognition. They let you see without being seen in return. Outside, the flashlights grew closer. The converted would arrive within minutes. 20 minutes, I said to Hayes. Give me that long with the telescope. If I find nothing, I'll evacuate and you can proceed with demolition. She hesitated, then gave a curt nod. 20 minutes, not a second more. Hour 51. What I've witnessed through my grandfather's telescope defies language. With the Pearson lenses in place, I could observe the void directly without feeling the pressure of reciprocal awareness. What I saw was not emptiness but a complex structure of non-space folding into our reality, creating geometries that violated every physical law I understood. And within this impossible architecture moved beings, not physical entities as we comprehend them, but patterns of intelligence vast and ancient. The Watchers, they manipulated the very fabric of space-time, adjusting star positions as casually as a child might rearrange toys. More terrifying was the purpose becoming apparent in their movements. They were constructing something, a bridge, a doorway, a passage between their realm and ours. The aperture wasn't just a window. It was becoming a permanent connection. I recorded everything, the specialized camera capturing images that no human eye could safely perceive without protection. As I worked, Eliza monitored the radio, which broadcast increasingly frequent emergency alerts from both military and converted sources, each contradicting the other. Military: remain indoors. Do not respond to civilian emergency broadcasts. Martial law is in effect. Converted: the observers gather. The window opens. Join us in revelation. The voices of the converted grew more numerous with each broadcast, familiar town figures adding their entreaties to Sheriff Whitaker's. The mayor, the high school principal, the local doctor, each voice slightly distorted, speaking with unnatural cadence about cosmic awakening and the gift of true sight. Hayes returned as promised, accompanied by 2 grim-faced soldiers carrying equipment I recognized as demolition charges. Time's up, Mr. Thorne, she announced. We've spotted at least 60 converted approaching from the east. The evacuation team is waiting at the base of the hill. I didn't move from the telescope. Look at these images first, I insisted, gesturing to my monitor. The aperture isn't random. It's being constructed specifically, systematically. Hayes glanced at the screen, her expression shifting from impatience to shock. That's impossible. The pattern matches the one beneath this observatory, I finished. And I'd bet it matches the layout of your containment points too. The realization hit her visibly. We've been following their blueprint. Our containment strategy is exactly what they wanted, Eliza concluded. The military response in 52 didn't stop the aperture, it just delayed it. And in doing so, you mapped out precisely where to position forces for the next occurrence. Hayes stared at the images, her military resolve crumbling before the cosmic implications. Then Protocol Nightfall would likely accelerate the process, I said. The energy released by simultaneous demolitions at these geometric points might be exactly what they need to force the aperture fully open. Outside, the first of the converted emerged from the tree line, their eyes reflecting starlight with unnatural brightness. Sheriff Whitaker led them, his face serene beneath the cosmic corruption of his gaze. "We need to leave now," Hayes urged, gesturing her soldiers toward the door. "No," I said with sudden certainty. This observatory was built for this moment. My grandfather knew what was coming and prepared accordingly. I reached beneath the main control panel and pressed a sequence of hidden switches I'd discovered in his journal. With a low hum, previously invisible lines of metal embedded in the observatory floor began to glow with soft blue light, forming a complex pattern that mirrored the stellar configuration currently surrounding the void. "What is that?" Hayes demanded. "A countermeasure," I replied, though I wasn't entirely sure myself. "Something my grandfather and Dr. Pearson designed together." As the pattern brightened, the converted outside stopped their advance, faces upturned to the sky as if listening to distant instructions. Hour 53. The collapse has begun, not just of our defense, but of reality itself. Whatever happens next will determine everything, and we have 19 hours remaining before the window opens completely. June 19th, hour 56 of darkness. The pattern embedded in my observatory floor has been glowing steadily for 3 hours now, casting eerie blue light across the room and out through the windows. The converted who had been approaching stopped at exactly 50 yards from the building. Not retreating, merely waiting in perfect stillness, their faces upturned to the void in the northeastern sky. Sheriff Whitaker stands at their center, occasionally raising his hand as if in greeting to something far above. Major Hayes established a defensive perimeter using her remaining loyal personnel, but it's clear from their dwindling numbers and increasing anxiety that military discipline is fracturing. I've overheard whispered conversations about unusual star patterns visible even to the naked eye and colleagues who've gone quiet during patrol. The converted aren't attacking, they don't need to. They simply wait for more observers to succumb to curiosity and look up. "Your grandfather's countermeasure bought us time," Hayes admitted as we huddled around my desk. "But it's temporary. The pattern is containing the converted, not the aperture itself." I studied the images captured through the Pearson lenses, comparing them to diagrams in Dr. Pearson's journal. "I think you're partially right. It's not just containing them, it's disrupting some kind of communication." Eliza nodded in agreement. "The pattern creates interference. It's why they can't approach the observatory despite clearly wanting to." "Then why didn't the military implement this in 52? Hayes demanded. "Because it doesn't stop the aperture from opening," I replied. "At best, it creates a safe zone around the observatory. And according to these equations, even that protection will fail when the aperture reaches full expansion at hour 72. The implications hung heavily in the room. Our sanctuary was temporary. Whatever my grandfather had built into this observatory wasn't designed to prevent the cosmic window from opening, merely to provide a protected vantage point from which to observe it. "There has to be more," Hayes insisted, leafing through the journal pages. "No one builds an elaborate protection system just to watch the end arrive." Eliza touched a weathered page containing a complex diagram. "My grandmother believed there was a way to close the aperture permanently, not just delay it for another 73 years. But the method required understanding exactly what these entities want. They want observers, I said, consciousness to perceive them, to make them real in our universe. But why? Hayes pressed. What's the purpose? Before anyone could theorize further, my radio crackled with static, then cleared to broadcast a new emergency alert. This one was different from previous messages. The voice was unfamiliar, speaking with unnatural precision. Attention observers. The alignment approaches completion. Those who witness will transcend. Those who resist will be rendered irrelevant. The watchers acknowledge this focal point. Surrender the Guardian technology. Hayes stiffened. Guardian technology? Eliza and I exchanged glances. The countermeasure, I said. They know about my grandfather's protection system, and they want it disabled, Hayes added grimly. The radio continued. The pattern interferes with perfect communion. Disable it and join in collective observation. Resistance prolongs unnecessary individuation. Release. See. Become. As the message ended, the converted outside began moving in perfect unison, forming concentric circles around the observatory, their movements creating a living reflection of the void's stellar configuration. Sheriff Whitaker stepped forward, his voice carrying clearly through the night. Morgan Thorne, we know you can hear us. Your grandfather's interference pattern denies you the gift of true perception. The Watchers have waited 73 years to correct the error of the last communion. Disable the pattern. Join us in witnessing what lies beyond the stars. Hayes pulled me away from the window. They're trying to manipulate you. Whatever you do, don't engage. But something in Ben's words resonated with fragments I'd been piecing together. What if there's truth in what they're saying? The military intervention in '52 might have interrupted something important, or prevented catastrophe, Hayes countered, or merely postponed it, Eliza said quietly. Creating a worse scenario now. I returned to the telescope, adjusting the Pearson lenses to their highest filtration setting. What I saw made my blood run cold. The void had developed structure visible even through the protective lenses, layers upon layers of non-Euclidean geometry folding into our reality. And at its center, something was taking form, assembling itself from borrowed starlight and absolute darkness. They're coming through, I whispered. Hour 60. Reality has begun to slip around us in subtle, terrifying ways. The interior dimensions of the observatory no longer match what they should be. Corridors stretch longer than architecturally possible. Rooms connect in configurations that violate spatial logic. Outside, the converted remain in their circular formation, but occasionally one will simply vanish, only to reappear elsewhere in the pattern without crossing the intervening space. Hayes soldiers report similar anomalies at the perimeter. One moment a section of fence exists, the next it's gone, replaced by an identical fence that somehow feels wrong. Time itself seems inconsistent. Watches disagree by minutes, then hours. My journal entries are the only reliable measure of the passage of hours now. Most concerning are the stars. Through the observatory's dome, we can see that familiar constellations have completely rearranged. Polaris no longer marks north. Orion's belt forms a circle rather than a line. And stars that should be distinct different colors now pulse in perfect synchronicity, all shifting through the same spectrum of impossible hues. I've been studying the pattern on the floor more carefully, comparing it to star charts and my grandfather's notes. It's not just a protective barrier, it's a key of some kind. The journal refers repeatedly to resonant frequencies and harmonic nullification. I think this is a tuning fork, I told Hayes and Eliza as they helped me trace the pattern's connections. Not just protection. It's designed to create a specific frequency that disrupts whatever the Watchers are trying to establish. Like acoustic interference? Hayes asked, her scientific background showing through her military exterior. Something like that, but on a cosmic scale. The aperture is a frequency, a harmonic between universes. This pattern generates a countering wave. Eliza frowned at the journal. But according to these calculations, the pattern's effect is limited. It couldn't possibly counter the fully opened aperture, unless it's amplified somehow, I mused. Our research was interrupted by another broadcast, this one coming simultaneously from every electronic device in the observatory. Radios, phone speakers, even equipment that shouldn't have audio capability. Emergency alert. Astronomic anomaly reaches critical phase. All citizens must participate in synchronized observation protocol. Look to the northeastern sky at precisely hour 65 for collective cognitive stabilization. Compliance is mandatory for reality preservation. The message repeated 3 times, each repetition slightly distorted, as if being translated through increasingly incompatible systems of language. That's not a military broadcast, Hayes said unnecessarily. No, I agreed. They're trying to increase the number of observers. Each person who looks up strengthens their foothold. Hayes checked her weapon, a pointless gesture given what we faced. What happens at hour 65? I consulted the star charts and my calculations. The void reaches 70% expansion. Not full manifestation, but enough to begin physical effects beyond what we're already experiencing. They're accelerating their timeline, Eliza noted. They must sense the countermeasure. Outside, the converted had begun a low, rhythmic chant, not in English or any language I recognized. The sound pulsed in perfect time with the throbbing stars surrounding the void. I turned back to the pattern on the floor, tracing its connections to the observatory's foundation. If my grandfather had built this as a cosmic tuning fork, there had to be a way to amplify its effect. I began examining the observatory's construction more carefully, looking for hidden mechanisms or connections. What I found beneath a section of flooring in the northwest corner defied explanation. A device that resembled both an ancient astrolabe and quantum computer, connected directly to the foundation through filaments of an unknown metal. Attached was a note in my grandfather's handwriting. For Morgan, when the stars align wrong and darkness persists, this is our resonator. The pattern is the instrument, but requires a conscious observer as conductor. One who understands but does not surrender. The watchers seek observation without comprehension. Give them comprehension without surrender. The price is high. Choose wisely. Grandfather, I showed the device and note to Eliza and Hayes. A resonator, Eliza whispered. My grandmother's journal mentioned this possibility, amplifying the countermeasure through directed consciousness. What does that mean? Hayes demanded. I understood with sudden, terrible clarity. It means someone has to consciously engage with the void, really see it, comprehend it while connected to this device. Not just passive observation, but active understanding. That would mean removing the Pearson lenses, Eliza said quietly. Direct perception, which leads to conversion, Hayes concluded. I looked out at the converted surrounding my observatory, at the twisted stars overhead, at the void growing visibly larger even as we spoke. The emergency alerts had increased their frequency, now bleeding through every frequency on the radio, each one urging observation at hour 65. We have 5 hours until their coordinated viewing, I said, and 12 hours until the aperture opens completely. Reality continues to fracture around us. The laws of physics bend and buckle. Space and time distort. And somewhere in this observatory lies the key to either stopping the collapse or accelerating it. Hour 63 approaches. The decision cannot be postponed much longer. June 19th, hour 65 of darkness. The moment of coordinated observation has arrived. From my position at the observatory's main window, I can see lights appearing across the darkened landscape of Pinewood County. Flashlights, lanterns, even burning torches, all held by figures standing motionless with faces upturned toward the northeastern sky. The converted have gathered every person they could find, positioning them in precise geometric formations that mirror the stellar configurations around the void. Major Hayes' remaining soldiers have established a final defensive ring around the observatory, though their discipline is visibly fracturing. 3 more defected in the past hour, simply walking away from their posts to join the converted below. Those who remain grip their weapons with white-knuckled determination, though what good conventional firearms might do against a cosmic incursion remains questionable. Hayes herself has grown increasingly agitated as hour 65 approached, checking her communications equipment obsessively despite the fact that all standard channels have devolved into staticky whispers punctuated by fragments of the converted's chant. "Command should have responded by now," she muttered, adjusting her radio for the dozenth time in the past hour. "Protocol Nightfall has contingencies for communication failure. I don't think conventional communications can penetrate whatever's happening to local spacetime," I replied, showing her the readings from my instruments. "Look at these gravitational fluctuations. Radio waves would be severely distorted." She stared at the data, her military pragmatism warring with cosmic impossibility. "There has to be a way to reach outside the affected zone. We can't be completely cut off." Eliza, who had been studying my grandfather's resonator device, looked up. "I don't think we are cut off. I think we're being deliberately isolated." Before Hayes could respond, every electronic device in the observatory activated simultaneously. Phones, radios, computer speakers, even equipment that contained no obvious audio components. The message that emerged was no longer just a voice, but a chorus of perfectly synchronized voices. Men and women, adults and children, all speaking with identical cadence. Hour 65. Collective observation commences. Reality recalibration initiated. All observers contribute to the manifold. Resistance focal points identified for special attention. Outside, the converted raised their arms in perfect unison, like an audience greeting celestial performers. The void in the sky pulsed once, a deep contraction followed by expansion that momentarily doubled its apparent size. The stars surrounding it rearranged instantly into a new configuration, a perfect spiral with the void at its center. The pattern on the observatory floor flared in response, its blue light intensifying, creating a dome of energy that enveloped the building. Where this energy field met the ground, reality itself seemed to ripple, like the surface of a pond disturbed by a dropped stone. "The resonator," Eliza said urgently. "It's responding to the aperture's expansion. This is what my grandmother described harmonic resonance between universal membranes." I rushed to the telescope, adjusting it to capture the void's new configuration. Even through the Pearson lenses, the images were almost unbearable to process, geometries that violated every principle of space, structures that existed in more dimensions than human perception could accommodate. "It's happening faster than we anticipated," I said, struggling to maintain scientific detachment in the face of cosmic horror. "The aperture is already at 80% expansion. Their coordinated observation is accelerating the process." Hayes joined me at the monitors, her military bearing momentarily forgotten as she stared at the impossible images. "What exactly are we looking at, Thorne?" "The space between universes," I replied. "A realm where our physics doesn't apply, populated by entities that perceive reality fundamentally differently than we do. And they want to come through? Enter our universe?" "Not exactly." Eliza approached, holding Dr. Pearson's journal open to a page covered in cramped equations and desperate notes. "According to my grandmother's research, they don't want to enter our universe. They want to remake it, restructure our reality to accommodate their mode of existence." The implications landed like a physical blow. "Total conversion," I whispered. "Not just of people, but of reality itself." Hayes' radio crackled suddenly, cutting through the chorus of converted voices with a burst of clear transmission. "Pine Ridge Outpost to any military personnel. We've lost containment at all checkpoints. Unknown entities manifesting physically at coordinates matching stellar configurations. Cannot maintain perimeter. Requesting immediate evacuation off." The transmission cut off abruptly. Hayes tried to respond, but received only the now familiar chorus of synchronized voices repeating their message about reality recalibration. I returned to the resonator device, studying its complex mechanisms with growing desperation. There has to be a way to amplify the countermeasure, to push back against this incursion. Your grandfather's note mentioned a conductor, Eliza reminded me. Someone who understands but doesn't surrender. Direct perception without conversion, Hayes said, the implications clear in her grim expression. Someone has to look into that void without protection and maintain their identity. While connected to the resonator, I added, tracing the connections between the device and the pattern embedded in the observatory floor. It would need to be calibrated precisely to the aperture's frequency. A terrible silence fell as we all recognized what this meant. Direct observation of the void, even through the telescope, would almost certainly result in conversion. The Pearson lenses provided protection only by filtering perception, limiting comprehension to protect consciousness. Without them, facing the full truth of what waited beyond that cosmic window, our grim deliberation was interrupted by a violent tremor that shook the entire observatory. Outside, reality itself appeared to fracture. Trees split and reassembled in impossible configurations. The ground rippled like water, and sections of the night sky briefly displayed entirely different stellar arrangements before snapping back. The converted didn't react to these anomalies. They remained perfectly still, arms raised, faces bathed in the void's impossible light. Reality fractures, Eliza said quietly. The membrane between universes is becoming dangerously thin. Another tremor, stronger than the first, knocked equipment from shelves and sent cracks racing across the observatory dome. We're out of time, Hayes announced, checking her weapon automatically despite its obvious uselessness. Someone needs to connect to that resonator now, or there won't be anything left to save. I looked between Hayes and Eliza, weighing impossible choices against cosmic annihilation. I should do it. This is my observatory, my grandfather's legacy. No, Eliza said firmly. I understand the equations, the theory. My grandmother dedicated her life to studying this phenomenon. It should be me. Hayes surprised us both by stepping forward. It should be someone with nothing left to lose. She gestured toward her radio, which now emitted only the converted's chant. My command is gone. My mission has failed, and I've seen too much to ever return to normal military service. Before either of us could respond, the observatory's main door burst open. Sheriff Whitaker stood in the doorway, his eyes now completely black except for pinpricks of light that mirrored the spiral pattern of stars around the void. Behind him stood at least a dozen converted, their expressions serene despite their utterly alien eyes. The Watchers have come to personally address the final point of resistance, Ben announced, his voice overlaid with harmonics that made it sound like many voices speaking in perfect unison. The pattern interferes with perfect communion. It must be disabled. Hayes raised her weapon, but I put my hand on her arm. Don't. That's still Ben's body, whatever's controlling his mind. The converted entered the observatory without urgency, spreading out to surround us. They made no aggressive moves, simply observing with their star-filled eyes. Morgan Thorne, Ben said, though it was clearly no longer Ben speaking. Guardian of the interference pattern. The Watchers recognize your lineage and its purpose. Your grandfather attempted to prevent communion. He failed. Dr. Pearson attempted to close the aperture. She failed. You cannot prevent what comes. I stepped forward, placing myself between the converted and the resonator. What exactly is coming? What do you want? Ben's face smiled, an expression too perfect to be human. Observation is existence. Perception creates reality. Your kind has looked to the stars for millennia, sending your consciousness into the void. We have been watching your watching. Now we bring perfect communion, the unification of observer and observed. You want to erase our individuality, Hayes accused. Absorb our consciousness.
Individuation is illusion, Ben replied.
Separation is suffering. We bring unity. Another violent tremor shook the building. Through the dome, we could see the void expanding visibly, stars swirling around it in accelerating spirals. The blue pattern on the floor pulsed in response, holding the converted at bay but visibly weakening with each pulse. "Hour 72 approaches," Ben announced. "The aperture will open fully. The pattern will fail. Resistance only brings suffering. Join in observation. Experience unity." As he spoke, I noticed something crucial. The converted could not approach the resonator directly. They formed a circle around it, unable to cross some invisible boundary. My grandfather's device was protecting itself. "The resonator is the key," I whispered to Hayes and Eliza. "It's what they truly fear." Another tremor, this one strong enough to shatter windows and split floorboards. Outside, reality itself was coming apart. Trees melting into ground, ground folding into sky, all bleeding together like a watercolor painting left in the rain. Hour 68. For hours until complete manifestation, but reality might not last that long. The fracture has begun. Our last chance at resistance lies in a device we barely understand, requiring a sacrifice we can barely contemplate. And the void continues to expand, hungry for observers, eager for communion. June 19th, hour 71 of darkness. 1 hour remains of the promised 72-hour night. But there will be no dawn. Not in any way we would recognize. I'm writing this by the blue glow of my grandfather's resonator device, the only light source in the observatory that doesn't flicker with alien geometries. My hands are trembling so badly I can barely hold the pen. Whether from exhaustion, terror, or the reality distortions pulsing through everything around us, I can't say anymore. After Sheriff Whitaker and the converted breached the observatory, events accelerated beyond comprehension. The standoff lasted only minutes before another reality fracture sent half the floor tilting at an impossible angle. 3 of the converted fell into what appeared to be an infinity of space that hadn't been their seconds before. Their screams Doppler shifted into silence as they tumbled away into nothingness. The fracture sealed itself moments later, leaving smooth floor where people had just disappeared. Major Hayes used the chaos to make her decision. While Eliza and I were bracing against the tremors, she sprinted to the resonator, ripped off the protective Pearson lenses from the observatory telescope, and locked herself into the calibration harness. "Run the sequence," she shouted at me, her military bearing never faltering even in that moment. "That's an order, civilian." Before I could stop her, she looked directly into the eyepiece, into the void without protection. Her body went rigid immediately. The star-like pinpricks appeared in her eyes within seconds, but something was different. Instead of the perfect spiral formation we'd seen in the other converted, her eyes showed a chaotic, struggling pattern, stars fighting against the pull of the void. "Hayes," I called out, moving toward her. "Stay back," she gasped, her voice alternating between her own and the multi-layered chorus of the converted. "Initiating resonance countermeasure. Can't hold them back much longer." Eliza rushed to the control panel, fingers flying across the antique switches and dials. She's fighting it, becoming a conductor between realities. The resonator is responding. The blue pattern etched into the floor blazed with sudden intensity, sending sheets of cerulean light climbing the walls and converging at the apex of the dome. Where they met, they formed a perfect inverted reflection of the void in the sky, a counteraperture. "It's working," Eliza shouted over the high-pitched whine now emanating from the resonator. "The resonance is creating interference patterns in the incursion field." Sheriff Whitaker and the remaining converted screamed in perfect unison, a sound no human throat should produce. They clutched their heads and staggered backward, away from the intensifying blue light. "The communion falters," Whitaker said, his voice distorting. "This resistance was anticipated. Secondary protocols initiating." Outside the observatory windows, the converted throughout Pinewood County suddenly changed their configuration. They dropped their stargazing posture and moved with synchronized precision, forming new geometric patterns on the ground that mirrored shifting constellations in the sky. The void pulsed again, expanding visibly. Major Hayes convulsed in the calibration harness, blood trickling from her eyes and ears. "Can't maintain," They're pushing through me. Too strong. The resonator needs more power. Eliza shouted, frantically adjusting controls. I glanced at my grandfather's journals spread across the desk. His final equation stared back at me, the one he'd never completed. I suddenly understood what was missing. It's not about power, I told Eliza, rushing to Hayes's side. It's about harmonics. The resonator doesn't need more energy. It needs proper tuning. Using principles from my grandfather's acoustic astronomy work, I adjusted the calibration sequence, aligning it not to oppose the void's frequency, but to create a complex harmonic relationship with it. Not fighting against the intrusion, but establishing boundaries through resonant interferometry. Hayes groaned, her back arching as the recalibration took effect. The star patterns in her eyes stabilized into a new configuration. Neither spiral nor chaos, but a steady grid. I see it now, she whispered, her voice her own again though strained beyond recognition. Not just what they are, but what they want. Why they chose this place, this moment. What do they want? I asked, holding her shoulders to steady her in the harness. To experience limitation, she gasped. They exist beyond dimensions. Perfect unity is eternal stagnation. They crave the boundaries of physical law, the novelty of separateness. The blue light from the counter-aperture intensified further, forming a dome of energy over the entire observatory. Outside, reality continued to fracture. Trees bent in impossible angles. The ground rippled and flowed like liquid, and the sky, the void now occupied nearly a quarter of the visible firmament, stars flowing around it like water circling a drain. Sheriff Whitaker slammed his fists against the boundary of blue light, his expression contorted with alien frustration. The communion cannot be denied. The aperture will complete at hour 72. The resistance focal point will be overwhelmed. We won't last that long, Eliza said, checking the resonator's status. The harmonic stabilization is temporary. The calibration machinery wasn't designed for continuous operation. Hayes's breathing grew more labored, her connection to the resonator visibly draining her life force. Listen carefully, she managed between gasps. They can't be stopped, but they can be limited, contained. The resonator pattern doesn't close the aperture. It defines its boundaries. I understood then what my grandfather had been working toward, not preventing contact with these entities, but establishing terms for it, creating a framework that would allow interaction without total conversion. We need to modify the resonator's output, I told Eliza. Shift from a defensive barrier to a defining boundary. Working together, we adjusted the device according to my grandfather's unfinished equations, completing them based on what we now understood about the void and its inhabitants. As we worked, Hayes continued her impossible role as conductor, a human consciousness somehow maintaining itself while directly perceiving entities from beyond our reality. Hour 71 ticked over to hour 72. The resonator emitted a final, piercing tone that seemed to vibrate through reality itself. The blue light collapsed inward, then exploded outward in an expanding ring that swept across Pinewood County and beyond. Where it passed, reality settled, stabilized, not returning to normal but finding a new equilibrium. The void remained in the sky, but no longer expanding. The stars around it ceased their spiral dance, forming instead a stable, complex pattern, a boundary defining where our reality ended and theirs began. Sheriff Whitaker and the converted collapsed to the ground simultaneously, like puppets with cut strings. After moments of stillness, they began to stir, groaning and disoriented. Major Hayes slumped in the calibration harness, unmoving. When I reached her, I found no pulse. Her eyes remained open, the grid-like pattern of stars now fixed and unmoving, a permanent window between worlds. She had sacrificed herself to become the permanent conductor, the human consciousness that defined the terms of contact. Outside, the darkness began to lift, not into normal daylight, but into something entirely new. A soft, violet-tinged illumination that cast no shadows, yet revealed every detail with perfect clarity. The landscape had stabilized, though changed in subtle ways that defied easy description. Proportions slightly altered, colors shifted just beyond the familiar spectrum. "Is it over?" Eliza asked, helping Sheriff Whitaker to his feet. His eyes were normal again, though haunted by what they had witnessed. "No," I replied, looking through the dome at the contained void. "It's just beginning." The emergency alert system crackled to life one final time, broadcasting not across radios but directly into our awareness. The last message transmitted through the dying connection Major Hayes had established. "Emergency alert. Reality recalibration complete. New parameters established. Coexistence protocol initiated. Prepare accordingly." It's been 3 hours since the 72-hour night officially ended. The converted have awakened with fragmented memories and altered perceptions. They can see things the rest of us cannot, glimpses of the entities existing just beyond the boundary Major Hayes established with her sacrifice. Eliza and I have been working to understand the new reality we inhabit. The resonator continues to function without Hayes physically connected to it, her consciousness somehow persisting in the harmonics of the device, maintaining the boundary between worlds. Sheriff Whitaker has organized the town's recovery efforts, though recovery seems like the wrong word for what we're doing. We're not returning to what was, we're adapting to what is. The void remains visible in our sky, a permanent aperture now defined by the complex star grid that Hayes established in her final moments. During what we still call night, though the concepts of day and night have fundamentally changed, some people claim they can see movement within it, entities observing us as we observe them, separated by a boundary that allows awareness without consumption. Government vehicles have begun arriving from outside the affected zone. Their instruments fail as they cross the boundary, their communications equipment receiving only the final emergency alert, repeated on endless loop. The night lasted exactly 72 hours, as promised. Dawn came, though not the dawn we expected. I don't know what happens next. I don't know if what Hayes did saved humanity or merely postponed our conversion. I don't know if the boundary she established will hold forever or if it's merely a temporary accommodation, a cosmic ceasefire in a war we didn't know we were fighting. What I do know is that we now exist in the perpetual dawn between realities. Night has ended, but ordinary daylight will never return. We have become the observers and the observed, caught in a permanent twilight between cosmic awareness and human limitation. The stars are watching, and thanks to Hayes, we're still here to watch them back. Prepare accordingly. Morgan Thorne, Pinewood County Observatory.